Ho, 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 ho. Welcome back, Mere Mortal Lights 2. Yes, we are getting into the Christmas editions. We've got Meanderings today. Folks, Mere Mortal Lights out there. You got one on this side.
Kyron here.
And Meanderings, a chance for us to... normally it's deep conversations with a lighthearted touch. There's probably going to be much more of the lighthearted touchness in Meanderings, but there might be some deep conversations. And I've got some deep truths, I guess, to start talking about. Or I'm going to be a little bit more direct with some of my thoughts.
Just going dry one.
Leading in with that. And I'll get started right there. So there was a conversation that I had at work very recently. And I basically just said what I was thinking, really, like very directly. Not as directly as you know, I'm not being like rude or anything.
To a coworker, a subordinate.
To a coworker in a group that had about 40 people or so. Basically, I won't get into the details of it, but I was basically putting my thoughts, which is a little bit against the grain. And I had some people who agreed with it, and there was some who disagreed with it.
Okay.
Very, very much so. And I was like, that's cool. That's just the way I see it. So, I'm not going to change my mind about this particular topic or thing. Again, this is coming to my, hold your thoughts or your ideas very strongly, but, loosely in a way. This one I was still holding it loosely, but there was nothing that was being shared that shifted me off my position. And it got me thinking, so not that particular topic, but in the same host on another topic, which I have I think a pretty strong mental perspective on, and I don't often say it, I guess. It's like, oh yeah, I feel like I won't I'm like, nah, fuck it. I'm going to share it for the Mere Mortal Lights. And I think it's to do with being able to, and I was just thinking about as I was driving here, whether it's the ability to earn income, whether it's the ability to work your face off, the ability for growth, the ability just to put in hard work, hard yakka, right? And I don't know, I think I've sometimes teetered on the edge of, saying to people, do what you will, I'll work at this perspective. I don't care how others are working or how others are putting in effort. That's kind of fine. It's each to their own. That's cool. But I'm putting myself on a stronger position into this. And I almost think that I'm going to look disapprovingly or think of people lesser so, because I feel it's such a fundamental thing that if you're not prepared to become, as Jordan Peterson says, like, an absolute savage and then control it, if you're not either aiming or not prepared for that in a lot of ways of life, then I'm going to look disapprovingly on that and go, that's not good enough. Like, okay. I'm going to generally be like, that's not good enough. So, for people out there now who talk about, oh, well, I can't do that. It's hard. And there's not a concrete reason. Like, I'm not being stupid, folks. If there's not a concrete reason as to why, you could say you're disabled, there's other priorities. That's fine. That's cool. But I feel like I don't personally accept anymore the answer of like, oh, but that's hard. That's a challenge. I go, you know what? I've seen enough of my life now to see other people being much more challenging spots to go, that's not good enough. That's not an answer that is a fair statement. So I think now when yourself or other people go, you know what? There's like, this is hard, or I'm not. I go, that's bullshit. That I'm not even. There's not even going to be a single iota of me for caring and being like, man, just don't give a shit. Like, okay. That's not good enough.
Will you cut people out of your life if they continually display?
Yes, I will.
behavior?
I think if there's individuals who are continually on the bandwagon of, oh man, today I did this thing and it was just so difficult, but there's no action behind it, like they're not talking action.
Just complaining,
essentially just complaining for the sake of complaining, then there's gonna, and look, again, more or less, I'm not saying that I am being, unkind to human beings. If you're going to complain, that's fine. Complaining is, I complain, folks. I complain for sure. But have some action at some point in that whole trade or whole idea, not for the conversation of just complaining's sake. There's venting, I get that. So, again, not saying that, but if there's no iota of action taking, of trying to move forward, of trying to improve it, then I'm going to start veering away and be like, maybe I could support this person, depending on the type of individual and how close out to me. But if they're a little bit in the external circle, I'm going to go, that's one of those connections I'm just going to let fade away, and I'm not going to be putting any energy into that.
What if they're not complaining, but they do show a kind of like systematic lack of go-getting or savagery in what you might say? So say they just don't have really ambitious goals. Say they're kind of like content with 60%. What about that? So they're not complaining, but you could see like, let's just use a concrete example. Our friend Joey. So he came up with this game. We all played it at his 30th birthday, where I dropped his cake. Fuck your cake, Joey. And he had this really fun game, and we're like, dang, that was a game that I would play again, and I could see that being a business opportunity of some sort. And he even said, oh yeah, I'm looking into it. If he shows zero follow through, if he shows or only 40% follow through in your eyes, what do you think about that? So he's not complaining about it.
Nothing about it. So again, there's a difference. There's a difference between it's the ones where I'm going to show disgust, where I'm going to show annoyance, disappointment, and ultimately not wanting to interact anymore in that relationships is if they've put forward whether it's driving towards something, but it is just pure complaint and nonchalant to the idea of that. It's like, okay, if you're putting yourself forward towards something
reasonable.
and then you're just not doing anything about it, that's not the level of like characteristics and values and follow through that I'm going to be associating with. I don't want to do that anymore. In that particular case, let's say, folks, out there, you're like, wait, I want to create this app, I want to create this website. Hell, I've done those before. You want to do that, but for some reason, one or another, you don't. Like, let's talk about the Web3 stuff that I wanted to do, right? I had it in my annual goals. I really wanted to do stuff like that, right?
Yes, correct.
And I went, I'm going to try and put some effort towards it. Realistically, it's falling more and more down the priority list. I'm even like kind of rethinking, was it going to be that valuable? Yes, no. I don't know if anybody has ever heard me talk about, I've complained, I just didn't get to do this, I really wanted to do it, but no, I just, like, there's some honesty around, it's a lower priority, I'm starting to reconsider whether it's even valuable. Cool. I'm happy with that. That's a fine, like, you can be striving or wanting to do something and not do it ultimately for whatever reason. Understandable. Cool. But if you are then putting, like, you're kind of like hammering it in, being like, woe is me. Woe is me because of this. Maybe it's the putting yourself in that, victim mentality, I guess, although it doesn't have to be just that, then I've got a problem with that. Okay, that's probably not an attitude I want to be reflected into my life, nor do I want to see, like, really be interacting with such as that. And I guess that's what there was a separate example with that with work, where someone was putting it through, which was, for me, and I was talking to a few other people who've come from different areas of life where there's been a few more challenges. I go, man, that view of life is such a very privileged, such a very, this is too hard. You can't do that. I'm like, man, I think if you looked at the reality of the world, that just feels like such a cop out in the scheme of things. But again, I'm not like tackling. I don't care again that you're doing that. It's just then like how I associate with that conversation. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to step away. I'm not going to be, Kanye coming out and saying I love Hitler. So I'm not going to be doing that. I don't know if you checked that out.
No, I don't.
So Kanye got kicked off Twitter again. Okay. But he came out in a big video with I forget his name, in a podcast. He was like, I love Hitler, and the podcast was trying to be like we get you love Hitler because of his Hugo Boss suits that he's made and all this, and he's like, no, I love Hitler. And anyways, he got kicked off. But check it out, folks, if you want to see that. But I don't know, that was just like a little thought as I was driving here, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to be a little bit more solid on this mentality or this thinking. You've been warned, folks. You've been walked. If you come to me and you're thinking this way, I'm probably going to be holding less back. There's more priorities in my life that's not going to be useful. So watch out.
Welcome to the Mere Mortals Christmas spirit.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. Well, look. Sometimes it's necessary to cut people and whatnot. There's always the irony of complaining about complainers, although at least you seem to have some sort of action to put in place.
This is not complaining. I'm straight up telling you there's an action coming that if you act that way around me, then my action will be to pull myself away.
Yeah. Okay.
That's going to be what it's going to be.
All right. Well, I'll get us into maybe a more philosophical type one. Okay. So I had a comment on the book reviews channel from a guy named Tiverton. Shout out to Tiverton. And it was around the Eugene Onegin or Eugene Onegin. I think that's how you say it.
I swear really hard. Up that link.
Evgeny's right. The last part, I'm not sure of.
Evgeny. Is it Evgeny?
No, it's spelt Eugene.
Ah, gotcha.
But they say it Evgeny. Anyway, he a lot of that book review was focused around this kind of concept of duelling, and as I was researching into the book a bit more, and I was realizing, there's some pretty fascinating stuff related around duelling here, which I didn't particularly know about, and I also missed in the book because
When you
I
say
didn't know
dueling,
about
what do you mean by that?
pistols, two people going at each other because of, their code of honor has been slighted. So yeah, or in this case it was pistols, but people have done it with sabers and maces and all sorts of weapons in the past. And it was only afterwards reading where I was like, oh, this character Zaretsky in the book, who was kind of the intermediary between these two people who were going to fight. He didn't follow the kind of etiquette of the time, which was, he was basically meant to be trying to stop the duel, but he kind of seemed a little bit bloodthirsty, or he liked the sport of it, or he was he loved gossiping and intrigue, and so he wanted it to go ahead. So he didn't do all of these things you're normally meant to do, such as asking the person who has been not the instigator, I guess the challenger. Do you want to apologize? He was meant to do that. He showed up late. He was meant to then cancel the duel. He didn't have a second ready. He was meant to cancel the duel. Like, there was all these things.
Do all these things, yep.
that should have negated the ultimate outcome of one of the characters dying. And it did get me think about, okay, so there's quite a few unwritten rules, and so people reading this in the 1850s, well, I think it came out in the 1830s, they would have known all of this, and they could have seen, oh, that character Zaretsky, like he did a bunch of bad things there, like he shouldn't have done that.
Should have done this and that. Yep.
And it's not critical to the book, but it was critical to my learning about this one part, which I found very interesting, which was the duel and the code of honor and whatnot. And it got me thinking, if someone in the 2100s, let's just say 2122, to put this a full 100 years in the future, and they have access to, let's assume, the archives of what we have now on the internet, of digital written stuff, books, there's going to be degradation of things, but let's just say they have a lot of access to stuff. What are some unwritten rules where they might look at us and not realize, because it's kind of implicit, or it's something that we kind of knew, but it's not made really apparent? Oh, yeah, you don't piss on the street, for example, in Australia. That's kind of an unwritten rule. Do you think there's any stuff that law?
There's a law. There is a law to not piss on the street.
But there's not there's probably not a
that would
law
be that would be an actual rule.
But there might not be for pissing on the street while you're wearing, I don't know, camouflage gear or something, because you just came out from the bush. Or
okay.
My friend Brendan got fined for doing archery in a park not too long ago.
But again, because there's a rule against that.
Is there a specific rule against archery, or is it against using some sort of
dangerous
weapon
thing or something like that?
So there's all sorts of things, but yes, there's it's kind of unwritten in a way. Brendan didn't actually know that, so prime example, just because it's written down doesn't mean it's necessarily in the kind of public sphere. So in Mackay, he did archery in the park all the time,
and no one came
out, no one cared. Didn't matter, as long as he was following general safety principles of not shooting next to people having a picnic. So he would. But when he came here into Brisbane and he, first got a bow and was just doing it in a park, some dude came over, arsehole, and fined him on the spot, not even giving him like a warning or anything.
Yep.
So what about, just because it's written down, it's also written down you're not allowed to carry like a pound of fish or some sort of bullshit in England. Like, there's all sorts of fucked up laws. Yep. So what's some stuff you think someone 100 years looking back, analysing our tweets and our Instagrams and our books and our video and our TV shows, what's some stuff you think they might not understand because it's not necessarily written down? Or if it's written down, it's written in such an obscure place it's very hard to find.
That's an interesting concept. Maybe the first one that comes to mind, I think there will be maybe the lack of people moving to digital cash quicker. Might be one thought in my mind, to see
what the the reasonings that we had of why it was scary, or
maybe like not the unwritten rule, but the I guess maybe some of the concepts of you still see older generations
just some
utilizing
precepts
cash. Like being like, what the hell, why would they be using that when obviously there was the ability to transact digitally, which is much quicker, all of that. Same thing goes with sending money to people. I think that, not that there's an unwritten rule, but there's a common usage of sending money through, what's a thing called Westagram or something like that, like to send money from different international places.
Oh, you mean Western Union?
That's the one, Western Union. When it's
Did
now,
you say Westagram?
Yeah, West something. I was like, I know it starts with West, and it's yellow and brown or whatever. But okay, it's not an unwritten rule, but it seems to be the thing that most people utilize if you're like of an older generation, when there's safer, more secure, faster ways to do it right at this very moment. And I go, maybe in 100 years' time, if people were to look back at, a film around then, or maybe a few years beforehand, and in the movie they're like, oh, we need to send this money internationally, but we're gonna have to wait 3 days. They'll be like, what? Like, they already had the technology to do this directly, so why weren't they doing that? And that might be like just a generational thing, or an not a misunderstanding, an unknowing of the technology that is available. Maybe that's the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, okay.
What is something you reckon?
Yeah, so I was thinking, like, there's quite a few things which still get lost, and just because there's databases and whatnot doesn't mean it's preserved. So
what do you mean by that?
So the Roosh V Forum, which I used to follow a lot of, and it had all like this pickup advice, and there was this guy Roosh V, and he'd write about this is my experiences in Poland, Eastern Europe, when I traveled Latin America, this is the kind of tips, techniques and things I found interesting. And there was this whole forum and there'd be like the most obscure topics from the kind of more male type thing, how you rate a woman versus like internal mindset of blah blah blah. I remember this one guy when Instagram was first starting to kind of kick off, he was like, you need to get on this thing, create a good profile, this is how I do it. And I've got 10,000 followers or something. It's like, oh my god, it's such good social value, social proof and things like that. Now when Roosh converted to Orthodox Christianity, he kind of renounced his
ways,
his pickup artist ways, and so it's kind of like the born again virgin sort of thing, which is pretty funny. And he deleted a lot of the forum. So the forum still exists now, but it is very Christian focused, and you will not read much about sex in there. It's almost zero. Maybe something between like a man and a wife, or something like a husband and a wife, something like that. But in terms of finding girls, picking up girls, techniques, where to go, how to dress, how to think, what to say, all that sort of stuff, like all got wiped off. And my brother was showing some interest, and I was like, oh, look, I'll see if there's an archive somewhere. But I couldn't find one easily. And so I was thinking, there's probably a lot of stuff related to behind the scenes, hidden communication, or even stuff that was once publicly available and then has disappeared. So if you were looking at Roosh, it would be hard to know somewhat that he was a pickup artist, because he's trying to move away from that. And so I still have some books of his which aren't available anywhere else now, some ebooks, because he's basically like removed them off everywhere. So I think there's quite a fair stuff around people who once had publicly available information, taking it offline, and maybe it's in some sort of internet archive somewhere. I don't know, but I don't know how much of that stuff is stored. So if you're looking back on Roosh's life, you'd maybe just see this kind of blank hole at the beginning, and then it's like, and then I get what
you're explaining. I'm confused as to how that maps to unwritten rules.
So it's more like stuff that was perhaps publicly known. So maybe unwritten rules is the worst way to say it. Public knowledge which has disappeared over time. Maybe that's a better way of putting it.
That makes it. Well, because I think the one that would, for me, maybe would be around I've been learning recently about the IMF and the World Bank connection, and just the way that they give out loans. And it was just in the Peter McCormack episode, but then kind of did my own little digging around as well.
Alex Gladstein is who you're talking about. The whole, part of the conversation was that like a lot of stuff that happened in the loans that were like in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and the original inception as to what it was. I bet you most people nowadays have no clue about it. Like, just from an understanding perspective, it feels like it's not there. I'm sure you could find that information, absolutely. Well, Alex Gladstein found it, so
yeah, and like
there's
heaps of articles about it, and you can yourself go and like find that information. Cool, fine, whatever.
Really?
Yeah.
How?
Well,
'cause
you can, as he was saying,
he was saying he had to go find books. I mean, you can say you can go find it, but I think he was talking about like he had to go through archives of a specific place.
You can type in IMF loan to the country and see how much loan repayments they have to the IMF. So you can find that very obviously.
Well,
what he was saying was the contractual stuff that was behind some of those loans.
Yeah.
Which I didn't like even look it up. I was like, okay, I trust that that's like information.
That's what I'm having a stab at. Like, you can find that. Yeah, if you fly to the Washington, go into some obscure library.
And that's what I'm saying. So like that to me, like he was saying that in the 60s or maybe 70s, 80s, there was a lot of protesting and around that. You don't hear anyone protesting about that anymore. And apparently there's been some shifts and changes to make it look a little bit healthier and for forgiveness of the debts to a lot of countries. But for forward 100 years, I feel like stuff will either have been pulled or have been shifted, or economic wars, actual hot wars will have happened, and all of that will have just become like, the hell? Why were countries accepting these humongous debts to be paid and no one was doing anything about it? I feel like there'll be a lot of, how did they allow that to happen? But in the moment right now, it doesn't feel like we're really questioning it. So that might be the only thing that I've thought of recently. But yeah, I guess my mind's like in like unknown rules, and I'm like, not sure otherwise.
Yeah. Perhaps stuff around, like you said, opinions of older generations, which perhaps might not have made its way onto the internet and therefore in a digital form. So I can imagine a lot of stuff around communism, people who perhaps lived through communist regimes or vice versa in fascist regimes. And
I think there's a good one. Kids games, like kids street games, I feel like will become this knowledge that'll go away because
like
kids who grow up today, you play on iPad, you might play some sports, but Red Rover, Tiggy, even hopscotch, like little games like that, they'll be like, oh, what is that? Like, what are you talking about? Why would you do that? Why would you like? I think some of those will kind of just go away into the abyss of time, and people will look back and be like, oh, what were they doing when they were young? Like, I have no idea, or might even hear about it and be like, what the hell? Why would they do that? So maybe that as well. Yeah. So that could be also potential. Yeah. What else have you got?
You kind of touched upon Bitcoin. You were talking about it. So I went to a Bitcoin meetup again pretty recently, and it was interesting, I suppose, seeing one of the things they were highlighting. So they were basically like the topic for this week was, what is it like going to in-person conferences and things like that. So a bunch of them had been to some recently, mostly around the Europe region, but also there was some islands off Portugal. I can't remember what they're called, like 3 hours flight off west of Portugal, where it was they went there and they had some sort of conference there, and then there was like hacker conferences and things like that, so not exclusively Bitcoin. But they were talking about how like one of the things they really enjoyed is the shared values portion, which was, you go to these things and 80% of the people, you'll agree with probably 80% of what the other people are saying, and then there's like 20% disagreements of stuff. Which I guess kind of ties in what you were talking about before, of those values that you hold again of hard work and whatnot. And it was making me think like, how have I really analyzed the people in my life and how much of their values I actually hold with them? Because I'm not actually sure there's that much. Like if you had to put like when we did that recently, the kind of life philosophy, or the kind of solo episode I did, and we had one before that, there was kind of 3 main things that I found for myself. It was violence, very very kind of anti-violence, and that's probably like one of the most core things I'd hold. Regulations as well, so kind of I'm very anti-regulation, or at least I'm definitely noticing myself become more of that. And then lying was the other one. And I honestly have no clue about what your particular views on you may be a little bit better, but a lot of my other friends, family members, I don't know if they even care about those things. Like I don't even know if they know the word regulation. And so sorting people by values, I'm sort of like I'm not sure how much that would actually work for me in what these Bitcoin people were talking about.
Yep.
Some of them maybe, but yeah, I'm not so sure.
Was there anything of interest that came out from any of those presentations worldwide that are worth sharing?
No, it sounded more like just networking events from what I could tell. There's no like.
What do you reckon the goal is for those folks of networking? What are they trying to achieve out of it?
The same that you'd achieve from networking, which I am actually not sure. So like you've gone to plenty of networking events and stuff, right?
So I guess for you, what was the achievement of the network?
For me?
Expansion, yeah.
For me going to the Bitcoin event?
Yeah. Yeah,
it is purely to meet some people here in Brisbane who, maybe I'd get one of them on the podcast sometime. They definitely have more specialized Bitcoin specific news, which I don't know about. So I think I only heard about, is it called Bolt 12 or Bolt from them, which I'd never heard about before. And I don't follow people who talk about that. So it's kind of useful to know what other people who are really into Bitcoin, what's kind of exciting them. So that's I suppose what. And
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was trying to understand, like, say those other folks, like that one was like sounded like a session where people from all over the world, like they've got different events across the world and they've come together. And I'm like, I guess from your perspective, it's like, oh, there's a network because I can have follow-up conversations, and there's like a learning aspect of someone who's like really into the space and kind of hearing from their perspective.
Yeah.
But I wonder from them what they value out of those conversations, given that all of them are really deep into the space. Is it to share that like deep knowledge, or is it just to purely get amongst people who they kind of have like similar values to?
Things they talked about were there was a little bit of fanboying, so they do get to meet some of their idols / celebrities of the Bitcoin world. So there's kind of the Michael Saylors, Stephen Livera, Natalie Brunel, probably McCormack, maybe Andreas. I don't think Andreas goes to those anymore, but they get to meet the people who they've heard a lot. They listen to all their podcasts. There's a little bit of fanboying going on. There's definitely one of the guys here who owns a Bitcoin only. I don't think he calls it an exchange. I think he prefers the word brokerage, perhaps, where it's you send in some money. There's like a slight microseconds of funds being held, him holding funds or him holding the Bitcoin for you, and then it gets transferred to the wallet that you nominated. For him, he got to meet some other people doing very similar exchanges, but in Europe. And he was thinking of expanding to Europe. So that one's, kind of pure business opportunity type things like that. I suppose those were two of the main ones that they talked about.
Yeah, okay. I guess my stream of thoughts was, often there's networking events or connections. Like say this afternoon, I'm going to a sort of like a Christmas party basically, but it's a Christmas party where I won't know anybody. It's in a very different field that I would be used to, and for me, I'm like, wait, like for me, the key thing around that is just getting to know people in a very different realm, kind of finding out a little bit more insights about that space that I just don't know about, and going like, okay, cool, that's my like drive in those particular scenarios, and often has been in other areas, unless it's like as you're talking about, like I could go to that Bitcoin event, it would be in that to learn obviously from people that are really connected. But I often wonder whether maybe this comes like now, starting to just get a little bit older, whether I just care enough now about going to events purely for the reason of because it's other people who really enjoy the same thing as me. Like I don't know. There's part of me that's starting to not rebel, but just be like, I just don't need it. I don't care about it. So I mean, the example here would be training or workouts that are to do with doing it all together, right? Like there's a Christmas party workout happening next Saturday, the following Saturday. It's at CrossFit, and there's like big groups being done, and everyone's going to get together and have fun. I get there's fun aspects to that, but internally myself, I'm like, I don't care about that. I actually genuinely would just rather just do my own workout. That's an even better thing for me, not be there.
Is that a recent thing? So I'm guessing like 5 years ago that you wouldn't have said that.
Yeah, I think 5 years ago I wouldn't have said that, and I'm thinking
you've gone already to more networking events probably than I ever will in my life.
Yeah, and I think I would have done it a lot because I do enjoy interacting with other people. Like I really enjoy that, and I can get really on a roll of talking. Someone got me on a roll at work the other day, and I was just chatting it up a storm, like just talking for I think an hour straight, just for fun stuff. And then also interestingly, he's held Bitcoin from 2014 and Doge from its early days. And he's basically was saying, he was like, I'm basically just waiting until like the price kind of goes up a little bit more and just head over to some other island and sell it and get away from tax and live there for a while and then come back. So I was like, very cool. But there's that aspect of it that I really enjoy. I think more and more I'm starting to find myself in the I don't need that anymore. Like that amount of joy, I'm finding it from a lot of other places, and maybe even the solitude of my own workout, the being with people that I'm really connected with. I'm like, that's an even better, that's an even more plus positive than just going to a random networking event and networking for the networking purpose. So I'm kind of like, yeah, that's cool. Which I think ties in with, because I was like, okay, so I've got a brand new car over there. I've got a brand new Apple Watch, loving the new Apple Watch. I've got to say, 2 years ago, I was like, man, I'm not going to get iPhone stuff. Yeah, I don't need the Apple stuff. And now I've got an iPhone. Now I've got the brand new Apple Watch and the new iPhone.
MacBook's on the way.
Took me a while. Probably not the MacBook, but it took me a while with the. Well, I say that, and who knows? With the iPhone, it took me a while to kind of enjoy it. Apple Watch, enjoyed it literally from the get go. It was just amazing for what it was. I'm like, okay, this is really good. But in that streamer thing, I was like, okay, there's a reason I can do this right now, right? And it's like, okay, cool, I've got enough financial independence that I can do that. And so there's a stream of living that, up to a certain point, you're pretty preoccupied with life on a getting by perspective, and then you migrate to if you're doing the right things or lucky or whatever it may be, to the okay, cool, now you can kind of splurge, or you've got the fuck you money, or you've got whatever you want to call it, right? And I think maybe 5 years ago I didn't have that ability, that flexibility, I think I've always chased that flexibility. And so there was aspects of my networking that were like, okay, cool, if I go in that network, then maybe I can meet this person, and that person might be able to give me connections into another business or whatever it may be. And look, if I look back on it truthfully, it was both me working my face off and also networking like a motherfucker that got me a lot of the jobs and connections that I have today. Fantastic. But now that I'm there, I'm like, I don't need to do that anymore. I don't actually need to continue.
I hate all these people.
No, I really enjoy having a conversation with all these people. But there's no impetus for me to go to a network right now to be like, oh, let's go connect with entrepreneurs to talk about business. Don't need to. I don't give a shit if I'll go if I want to learn, right? But it's not going to become priority now over putting up a Christmas tree with a family. That's more important. That's now 20 times more important. I go, you know what? I'll even call it out. I think people need to get to if they can. Again, there's always extremities, but if you can get to a point where you can be flexible with your financial independence. I think everyone kind of wants that, but to be able to have those choices, it's a wonderful thing. I think it's a really, really good thing. So yeah, that's my call out. Immortal Lights, get rich or die trying. No, I'm kidding. Don't get rich or die trying. So I actually think also the people who subside on really low income and on a choice, I'm curious about them. I'm curious about Karen. I'm curious about individuals who live a very basic life in subsistence. I haven't worked it through in my mind just yet. Of this thinking.
I would say my probably big point would be where you've reached now. I reached that 6 years ago without all the effort.
Yep. In terms of
I live my life how I want to. That's the big thing.
What I'm playing with, it's I'm playing around in my mind. I'm like, there's individuals out in the world who get to a stage, and it's a bias towards the people that I enjoy listening to, the people who are really trying to, they're striving, or trying to go to the growth path, or they're trying to do whatever. And I don't know, there's something that irks me, but I don't know what it is around people that have an anti-growth mindset. I think there's a weakness behind that in my mind that I go, why? Why is there that particular mindset? Because I'm flipping between, I see the peacefulness of not just anti-growth, but just neutrality. There's a lot of peace behind that. There's a lot of understanding and coming to grips with the world. And then I'll listen to other people, or I'll have a bias towards this, where I'll listen and be like, people who, Tom Bilyeu and a few others, which, will drill it into your mind, like, growth is basically life, and if you're not growing, you're dying. That type of mentality. I don't go all the way to that extreme, but I think I'm just in my own personal bias. Like I do shift towards that, and it gets me questioning. I'm like, what would actually drive someone to be anti-growth or to want neutrality? It confuses me a little bit, I think, to my default.
I can try and explain. There's a lot, like if you had to put a one word on related to growth on like the current, at least here in Australia, I feel like consumerism would be pretty high up there. Do you get that same feeling? Like how many anti-growth people do you think are actually out there?
How many anti-growth people are out there?
Compared to growth people. I would have said it's 98%
anti-growth?
No, growth.
Growth. Yeah, I would have said the same thing. Yeah, I would have said something like that.
So just because it's like the majority doesn't necessarily make to me like, oh, that must mean it's the right way, the best thing, the good thing.
Yeah.
So just chucking that out there. I just see it as especially it's very easy to get confused about things. So it's very easy to focus on the money and not what's the money is actually there for, which is for the important things. Like, if you were locked in a room on Mars with a fucking quadrillion dollars, would that make you, would that be the ultimate like happiness, contentment, meaning of your life? I'm assuming most people would say no, because it's like, oh, I can't do anything with it. I think growth is sort of similar in that it's very easy to get caught up in, I'd like the next thing, I want this to be better, and things change, and there's going to be a point where you hit your peak. Like life doesn't continually get better and better and better and better and better, because you get old, and then now you can't do these physical things you used to, but maybe your money side of things you can, now that's better, and then now I'm having grandkids, that's even better, now I've got a big family. For me personally, I just see like I don't there's something about continually chasing something which and it feels like people chase, it's the chase they enjoy, not exactly the thing that they're chasing. So chasing the world-class medal, chasing the next new car, chasing the next new PlayStation thing, and a lot of it turns out to be material, but some of it is also chasing the perfect girlfriend, chasing the approval of my dad, chasing etc. I find that chasing portion not that fun. I don't personally see that helping me. So it's like, well, why do I need more money than I've got now? And if I need it, I'll go out and get it. But like, why plan for a future which is maybe not something I even want? And so I know what I want now.
I guess my mentality is more, because it's not just financial, there's like at a broader spectrum. And I guess I haven't met any individual who is purely like neutrality or anti-growth across everything, because you're not neutrality, anti-growth, but everything. There's things that you're in growth. But if there was like someone with an overabundance, I cannot picture or understand that in a broad context for everything. And so like for me, it would be like if someone gets to a point where let's say they're content. So they're content with like where they are. You can talk about financially, physically, in life, whatever, and you kind of just like pause, and you're like, cool, I'm just gonna maintain neutrality, or even like anti-growth, I'll even pull back forever. I don't know, something to me goes like, you might as well die. Like you might as well just have died at that point, because the existence of 20, 30 more years of doing maybe the exact same thing, or no longer striving or having that, not so much a challenge, but just the chase, there's another word for it, but I'm missing now. But anyway, so that particular striving mentality for it, to kind of do something more or continue to become whatever human is of improvement, I go, yeah, I don't get it. Where's the? I wouldn't understand the basic idea of why. Because there's definitely things in me that neutrality for sure. Like say, I just explained it with like networking.
I was going to say,
I've gone like I'm now pulling back from that.
Yeah,
That's understandable. Like there's understandable things, but if it's like a broad perspective, where in a lot of aspects of life, maybe like, you know, if I talk about it, mind, body, and soul, and you have it in your split of 7, you know, if 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 3, I kind of go, okay, cool, I'm done. Like I can pause, I can just subside, or even negate. That to me would seem like a critical issue. Like that's pretty bad.
What if it's? Do you feel you're being harsh on people because maybe a lot of them aren't showing it visibly? So it's much easier to be like, oh, that person loves growth, or they're really getting after it because they're doing it in a money sense. Whereas maybe, you know, what if they're trying to become a better human? Let's just say something like that. Or they're trying to improve their, you know, something that's not really easy to see visibly on the surface. Maybe they're trying to be less depressed at home, be less unhappy. I think that can be hard to see in many ways. And so then it would be, I don't know, maybe you're being harsh on someone just because they show it in one particular aspect, much like 20-year-old Juan would look at now Juan and be like, he's not networking, he's dying, might just go kill yourself. Yeah, I'm wondering how many people do you think are anti-growth? Do you think it's that kind of 2% that I
Probably
said?
2%. I think you're missing though, like that particular statement is like, I would say that's more of a, are you judging people like that? I think the answer is no. Like I'm not. I've yet to come across. I don't think I've mentally like thought about this of like, oh, that one person, judgment. They're like anti-growth completely. I don't want to. No, there's none of that. Like I don't think I've ever thought that. I think my point is to reach someone to an understanding of a human being like that is you'd have to know them like really deeply, really personally. So it's that one aspect. But for me, I kind of go, for those people, let's say it's 2%, 1%, whatever it may be, I would just I would not be able to understand them to such a core level that if I was able ever like to encounter people like that, I would imagine be like, I can't connect or understand you like in such a level. Probably not going to be someone I'm going to be interacting with for the rest of my life. It'd be like, nah, that's just even like in at the core conversational of things that you would discuss. It would just be so much of an antithesis of what I would believe in. So it's like, okay, this is a bit strange. Almost as much as if I was really religious, it'd be like a completely different religion and be like, nah, this makes no sense to me. I'm almost shutting off to that idea. Like it's like that strong a feeling I reckon I would have if I was to encounter. Now, I'm saying I don't think I've encountered anybody like that, but I've seen glimpses of anti-growth across a broad spectrum in some people that I'm like, huh, that's interesting. That's interesting to me. Like I'm confused almost to the point of like, I don't know how a human gets to that point.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Well, yeah, I'm definitely more sympathetic to them. The people who I would really avoid, and the ones, I'm not going to say they should go kill themselves, but there was this one girl I met. I haven't said this that much, so hopefully it's not too boring to people. But on my first week in Chile, when I arrived there in 2018, I was in this fucking shite hostel that my friend Claudio, who was from Chile, recommended. He's like, really good hostel, blah blah. And I didn't even bother to look up the reviews on Hostel World and realize, oh man, it's a piece of shit, and it's not even cheap. Like it's a piece of shit and costs the same as, you know, these other ones just down the road. And so weird people congregated there. Some of the strangest people I met in that first week
were there.
Now, look, maybe it was because my impressions were, you know, new country, and so I could see it just being like, oh wow, everyone I meet's weird, because I was in a new country traveling and meeting travelers properly. But some of them were fucking weird, man. And this one girl, she basically was, so there's 3 Greenpeace boats. There's Rainbow Warrior and I think 2 others.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, Greenpeace? You don't know what Greenpeace is?
No.
the people, fucking hell. All right. Greenpeace is that activist group who
that
are
would
very.
Greenpeace. Okay, yes,
so
yes.
imagine
I've heard
Peter,
of Greenpeace. Yep.
Yep. And so they've got a boat, and they used to go out to whaling ships, and they would
okay, yes, I have heard a little bit of this.
annoy.
Only like a tiny little bit.
So they're very, very hardcore activists. Very. I mean, talk about anti-growth. I think they're kind of like there's too many humans on the world. We're a cancer on the planet, sort of mentality.
Current style.
Yeah, I'm not.
You were calling it out the other day. You were saying that you'd be okay with population decrease. So this is basically this.
Fucking
this
put in words in my
Damn.
mouth.
Wasn't that what you said?
No.
Damn.
I 100% did not say that. Go listen to that episode again, and you'll see. I did not say anything close to that. Anyway, this girl wasn't on the Rainbow Warrior, but she was on one of the other two ships.
Okay.
And man, the hatred in her heart was it would just ooze out, and basically everything she said. I hung around with her for probably about 3 or 4 hours total, and I've never met someone where I just went, wow, you are like toxic. That word, which gets thrown around a lot.
That one was like she was clear with it.
She was toxic, man. I could see any substantial time with her turning into like you becoming a worse person.
Damn,
for sure. Yeah, those are the sort of people I'm more wary of. And well, I mean, I guess she's anti-growth, so in some ways, but. Yeah, like the level of just hatred against the world she had was like pretty strong. Up there. It was pretty up there, man. Yeah. So
I think I might have met a couple of people through my life who were like that, but I must have just not spent a significant amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, when you're in a hostel room and you're just chatting, you got a couple of hours of just face to face, nothing else going on. Yeah. Sort of.
I think now. I guess now. I don't know, actually. I don't know what I would do presented to that. But I feel like if I was presented with that right now, I would be okay to be really rude and be like, goodbye. Like, just literally just walk away and not interact with this human being and be like, nah, no way.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, yeah, for sure. I was just being chatty with her, and I think we went out somewhere to a park or something afterwards because I wanted to get some food. Yep. And then it was like, yeah, okay, all right, see ya.
Yeah, ciao. So if you're listening in more lights and you're one of those individuals who are toxic to humanity, feel free to go to Mars, go get $1 trillion if you'd like, and just sit there.
See, enjoy yourself. Maybe some growth for her would be good. Maybe some consumerism for her would be good.
Maybe. Yeah. I wouldn't say consumerism as a whole is a good thing, is an end state best outcome.
I think it's a terrible thing, man.
Yeah, I don't think consumerism for the consumerism's sake is good. But I think being wealthy enough to be flexible and to have things in life that can better you in different ways can be a really great thing. But not consumerism for the sake of consumerism, as in, oh, I need to buy a shirt and I need to go do that. I'm going to do that instead of freaking buying good food or something like that. Nah, that's terrible. And then maybe I don't have a strong views on inflation, but I also see the being on the treadmill of growth in that aspect is a bad thing overall from just kind of stepping away and being able to go down your separate path. There's differences to that, but I will be okay with people being like, oh yes, I want to be able to earn more income so I can have the right food, the right living standards, the right whatever. Absolutely, I understand that. Like, get more money so you can. Like, would you call that consumerism? Maybe not. To be able to afford, like, to do the things that are right. Like, there are, like, for yourself, I would assume that your micronutrient intake is probably dog shit from, like, an overall perspective.
Mate, I was eating some fucking broccoli yesterday. I hate that shit, but I was still getting in some.
He was still getting the broccoli in. But even down to, like, and this is just a very personal thing for me. I'll be like, oh, there are ways you can eat better. There's ways that everyone can eat better. And there's probably just more coincides with me in, like, that longer, healthier living style. But I'm not going to be against a person who's like, oh, I need to do this because I want to be purchasing these things which are better for me. End outcome, that's fantastic. But if your end outcome is consumerism at its most core, like, think about it in the most evil way or weird way, I'd be like, okay, perhaps not.
Yeah, I try and be as empathetic as I can to individuals. So no matter how weird to me they're living their life, as long as they're not hurting anyone else, I'm like, go ahead, go nuts. But yeah, it's those kind of like broad scale changes which influence people and humanity. You just mentioned inflation. I saw it in Argentina particularly, how bad it is when it goes wrong. And it does make me think, oh, you know, if it's 3% here, does that mean it's just a little bit wrong? And it could actually be a bit better if it was 0 or like negative. I don't know. It does make me question though. So yeah, the gripes I have in most cases are those bureaucracy, large scale forces behind the scenes, like almost, funnily enough, like a non-human thing. I think I'm very pro-human in many ways, but it's the at the individual level, and when it's like groups of humans, I'm wary of that. I'm wary of that stuff. Yeah.
All right, we'll probably tie up there, folks.
Yeah, that was a fun one, man.
Immortal, thank you very much for joining us. This has been Meandering Session. Once again, we have deep conversations with lighthearted touch. Now, if you got a little bit of value,
deep today.
We got a little bit deep. Look, we provide value obviously by way of either you're watching us or you're hearing the audio, and if you go, you know what, they provided some value to us, well, you're in luck. You can provide value back to us, and that's through the value for value model. You can be using any of the new apps out there. You know, we talk about things like Fountain, Breeze. There's new podcasts all around, which allow you to send through value via the way of either Boostergramming or streaming us while listening to the, streaming a little bit of Satoshis our way while you listen to the podcast. If you are in that sphere and you're participating in there, then I'm going to be direct. You should be utilizing some of those to transfer some money, or at least supporting us in that way. If you're not in that sphere and you're not there yet, I would say, sharing the podcast with a friend, telling people about it, comment, listening, really following. That's also, does help us in the immediacy.
Yeah, like even that
long term
book review comment.
Yeah,
I enjoy that. It gives me some thoughts,
it creates content for us, right? Like in terms of conversation. So keep it up, folks. In terms of commenting, we always see that come through, which is awesome. But yeah, follow and share around the podcast as well if you have enjoyed it.
100%.
Share your thoughts. So for now, Immortal Lights, we'll leave it there. Juan out.
Kyron out. Ho 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 ho.